did people eat 500 years ago? And does that teach us anything about what diet we should be eating today?
No, it doesn't teach us anything about what we should be eating today, because 500 years ago only puts us into the 1500s. And you're looking at industrialized, or I shouldn't say industrialized, you're looking at societies where people were living and eating, excuse me, actually a relatively restricted range of foods based on what they could afford and what they could grow. That is, you know, in developed areas. If you want to try and sort of ascertain what we should be eating relative to what ancient peoples ate, you have to go back, I would say, 6,000 or 7,000 years. And that brings up a very interesting point, because, you know, another kind of word for keto is paleo. I mean, they're all in the same family. Keto, low carb, paleo, because again, the so-called paleo people, based on very specious, poorly done theories, and I can't even call it science because it really isn't science, postulated that, oh, you know, ancient peoples were eating all of this animal food and so forth, which is ludicrous in and of itself, and therefore that's what we should do. Well, the fact is that when they find fossilized coprolites, human coprolites, and that's a very polite, nice way of saying fossilized turds. When they find the remnants of feces from human beings from Paleolithic times, they weren't full of meat and bone fragments. They were giant coprolites that are made of plant fiber. These people were eating mostly plants, and lots of them. And yeah, that's what we should look at, because that tells us what our system has adapted to. And when you examine the human anatomy and physiology carefully, it is very clear that we have a digestive system adapted to a plant-based diet. We don't have 6 more protein digesting enzymes than other primates. We have 6 times more carbohydrate digesting enzymes, starch digesting enzymes than other primates. Clearly, our bodies have adapted to a plant-based diet, not a meat and fat-based diet. When you look at the way our liver handles fat and cholesterol in the diet, you can take a dog, you can take a cat, or any other carnivore. No matter how much fat and cholesterol you feed them, their lipid profiles and their bloodstream never go off kilter. They never start to develop blockages and fat and cholesterol-based injury to their blood vessels, and they don't develop what's called steatohepatitis or fatty liver disease. No matter how much you give them, they can put it away. Their liver is designed to handle all of that fat, cholesterol, and physiologically deal with it and not end up with end organ damage. We can't. We know that human beings and other herbivores develop lesions in our arteries and fatty livers when we eat relatively low amounts of fat and cholesterol in our diet, because our liver wasn't designed to handle that kind of a diet. And as a result, when we eat a diet that's built around animal foods and so forth, we weakens our bones, drives up risk for kidney disease, cancer, heart disease, and developing fatty liver. Several years ago, the movie Super Size Me came out, where the protagonist, Morgan Spurlock, ate nothing but fast food for, I think, 3 months straight. And even in that short period of time, all of that fat animal protein, and cholesterol, he started developing signs of fatty infiltration in his liver, which, if that were to continue unabated, would ultimately or could ultimately result in liver cirrhosis and eventually liver failure. And in fact, steatohepatitis is one of the most rapidly increasing diseases in the United States and other Western countries because of the way people are eating. It is not a healthy way to eat. It will destroy your organs, and it should be avoided.
Please discuss the role of race in lactose intolerance. Why do different races have different levels of lactose intolerance? And what factors play into the differences in these levels?
Sure. So let's, rather than race, let's just talk about mammals, okay? Lactose is the sugar that is in mammalian milk. What many people don't realize is that lactose is what's called a disaccharide, meaning it's two individual sugar molecules joined together into one kind of super big molecule. Our bodies are only able to absorb single molecules of sugars or monosaccharides, not disaccharides. So whenever you ingest a disaccharide, you have to have an enzyme that will split those two sugar molecules into their individual constituent molecules so you can absorb them separately. Table sugar that we're all familiar with, white, typical white sugar, is a disaccharide that is comprised of one glucose molecule attached to one fructose molecule. But all human beings have a enzyme lining our intestine called sucrase that will break apart sucrose or table sugar into the individual molecules. We absorb it, no problem. And pretty much no matter how much, sadly, sugar people eat, they can absorb it with no problem. Again, lactose normally only found in mammalian milk. So all mammals, as infants, have the enzyme lactase that will split those molecules into their individual components. Lactose is comprised of a glucose molecule attached to a galactose molecule. And again, if you don't have the enzyme lactase, you can't split them and you can't absorb them. As babies, we all have it. But as mammals normally age out of their infant/toddler stage, they stop drinking their mother's milk. And as a result, their bodies stop making lactose, or lactase, excuse me. And they lose the ability then to absorb the sugar, lactose. That is also true for 65 to 70% of the human population around the world. That is the norm. But what we have observed is that in societies where they began the practice of dairying, meaning using the milk from the pregnant mammals for calories. So most notably in Northern European areas where plant foods weren't available and year-round, and during winter months they needed extra calories, they started using the milk of cows, sheep, and goats to kind of tide them over. And over time, those calories from that those mammalian milks became so important for survival, they selected for people who continued to make the lactase enzyme throughout their lifestyle. So again, the baseline for humans, as with all mammals, is to stop making it once you no longer need it. But for those populations where it was an important energy source, over time, they basically selected for the people who continued to make it throughout their lifetime, because those are the people who were able to get through the winter without getting sick, and they then had more kids, and their kids continue to make it. And so you see that there are select populations where dairying has been an integral part of the culture, that are lactase persisters, meaning they continue to make this lactose digesting enzyme throughout their lifetimes. But that is not true for most of the world's population. And that is particularly true for people of color, that when you look at West Africans, Asians, New World Hispanics, and Native Americans who did not have dairy products as an integral part of their dietary regimen, historically, they are like most of the world's humans. They do not make lactase beyond childhood. And as a result, if they ingest lactose containing products, I don't even want to call them foods, because no mammal is supposed to be drinking milk beyond toddlerhood. Milk is a specific material designed by nature to do certain things, and it's not meant for adults of any species. And quite frankly, if human beings want to have milk, wouldn't it make much more sense to basically milk pregnant women? But we'll leave that aside. And so that is why we see that the majority of people of color in the United States, and again around the world, are lactose intolerant, because they're still at the baseline or default setting for human beings. And it's only those relatively small populations that practice using the milk of other species that have over time selected for individuals, a high percentage of individuals who are able to absorb lactose foods. So that's what accounts for the differences. And I also want to emphasize that people, because I've talked about this at lectures, and people will say, well, I don't have any problem, typically a white person will raise their hand and say, I don't have any problem absorbing lactose. You still shouldn't be drinking milk, because again, milk is damaging to the metabolism and physiology of adults in a number of different ways. It's very highly inflammatory. It causes excess mucus production. The proteins that are in milk are growth stimulatory proteins, which in adults who have a body that shouldn't be trying to grow means that they become carcinogenic. They become cancer promoting. So again, even if you are not lactose intolerant, you still shouldn't be drinking milk.